Hello, everyone, and welcome to Midcurve. Today, we have a very interesting guest with us, and one of the OGs in the crypto podcasting space.
Come on,
Peter, Peter McCormack. Thank you so much for coming on, sir.
nice to see you both. Thanks for having me. By the way, dude, you look like Zach. What's it? I can't say his surname. Galifianakis, the guy from The Hangover.
Oh, that's a rough one. Man,
That's a cool one.
That's pretty devastating.
He's
I keep
like-
telling people like it's tough podcasting with Justin because like
He's so handsome.
sometimes my girlfriends watch these and it's like, man, I have a co-host who's more handsome than me, and then fucking you come on, like fucking discount Ryan Gosling over here, and now I'm the guy on the left, and I just gotta like pretend that I'm not getting mugged for the next hour.
Bro, you're being the funny guy. That's what everyone wants, a funny guy.
That
I
is
guess.
Fuck your
that is
co-host,
one.
handsome bastard.
That is one of the funniest things that's ever been said on this podcast.
Am I come on, I cannot be the first person to have said that.
Yeah, well, not on like a live recording.
I've said before.
Dude, I can't keep it together. That is so funny. Andrew just catching strays right off the bat. That's so
right.
funny.
Like people just intuitively sense what the pod is about.
Yeah, I mean, it's called Midcurve. It's called Midcurve. That's that's what it is. It's meant to be
You're so
midcurve.
not mid though. Look at you, you handsome bastard. You're like an 8 at least. That's too ugly fuckers.
Okay,
Oh my
I'll take that. An 8. I appreciate you, Peter.
We are completely derailed in the first 5 seconds of this podcast.
For real.
Okay. So first of all, let's get back on track here. To give this conversation some context, this is actually kind of nostalgic for me. It's weird hearing your voice and seeing you like in person, kind of, because you were actually a big part of my own crypto journey in the early days. 2000. I think. When did you start What Bitcoin Did?
November 17th, 2017.
Yes. So in 2017, like late 2017, maybe like January 2018, I started listening to What Bitcoin Did, and I listened to like every episode. I mean, it was like it was. I mean, it was one of the best out there, and still is. I mean, it's evolved over time and become even better, I think. But can you give us a little bit of background as to your own Bitcoin journey and starting What Bitcoin Did?
Yeah, I discovered Bitcoin in 2013. One of my friends called me up and he's like, Pete, there's a website you can buy drugs on the internet with. I was like, what? And he was like, yeah, it's called the Silk Road. You just need Bitcoin and you can get the best cocaine in the world. Back then I was a bit of a fiend. And so I was like, yeah, show me the way. I don't take drugs anymore. I haven't taken drugs in over a decade. But at the time, I was a fiend and you could get the best cocaine possible on the Silk Road. So I discovered Bitcoin, right? Kind of messing around with it. I hadn't really looked into it. I wasn't like, oh, this is a tool that can take down central banks and this is the way we could subvert government. I was just like, this is cool. This is a way to buy drugs, and that was interesting. And I did try and trade it a little bit, made a load of money, lost a load of money, and then just forgot about it until like late 2016. And my mum gets sick; she gets cancer, so we wanted to get her cannabis oil. So like I went on Coinbase, bought some Bitcoin, and bought some cannabis oil for mum. And then that time I kind of stuck around. Coinbase had Ethereum at the time, so I was like, oh, what is this? I bought a bunch of Ethereum, then I bought every shitcoin there is, and then over the space of 2017, again, I traded. Like most, I don't know when you guys got in, but like 2017, everyone was getting rich. Whatever you bought just went up. I obviously thought I was a complete genius. And then I realized I wasn't a genius and didn't want to be a trader. And I'd met this guy called Rich Roll, who's a podcaster, very successful. Yeah, vegan athlete, podcaster. Through a weird set of events, I ended up at a yoga and running retreat he was running in Italy, and with a bunch of people who were all fucked up. I was fucked up because I just got divorced and trying to come off drugs, and And so it was just 40 people who were fucked up, hanging out, running, doing yoga, eating vegan food, and crying. And by the end of it, Richard said, I think he probably said this to everyone, but he had these like 1-to-1 sessions at the end. It was like, yeah, what have you got out of this? Have you enjoyed it? And like, if you're ever in LA, look me up. And so I got home and booked a flight to LA. I got there like 2 weeks later. I stayed at my friend Justin's house in Venice and just like called him. I was like, oh, hi, Rich, I'm here. He was like, come over to the house. So I went over to the house, we hung out, and I was just like, look, dude, I've quit advertising. I think your job's amazing. I want to be a podcaster. How do you do it? And so he was like, well, go and watch this course. It was a smart passive income course. This is the equipment you need. So I went back to my buddy Justin's house. I ordered all the equipment on Amazon. I did the course, online course, and then I messaged Luke Martin and said, are you free tomorrow? I want to record a podcast. And here we are, 7 years later, and I'm talking to you guys. That was it. Just a weird set of events.
That's actually insane.
Yeah, but like everyone has a story, right? You know, that was just my story. It was this time between quitting the advertising industry, trying to get off drugs, getting divorced, like my mum dying. It was like a rough few years, and I'd just gone running. I'd bought running shoes. I like Forrest Gump. I was running every day. And then just happened to meet Rich. But I mean, I feel very lucky, right? I mean, what a weird set of events, but it was just a weird chain of events that led to it.
Yeah. Yes, 100%. So in that time, like, I mean, you recorded with Luke. Was that your first one?
Yeah, episode 1, Luke Martin.
That's amazing.
Yeah. He did episode 200. And was it episode 200 he did? Or is it the 2nd year anniversary he did? I can't remember. We've recorded twice.
Yeah. He's amazing as well. Like he's great at content. I love watching his stuff.
Yeah.
But like in that time, did it kind of take off right away, or were there like a set of challenges that you kind of had to overcome, or was it a grind? I don't actually remember like watching the subscriber count. I remember listening to them, but I don't remember like paying attention closely.
Not really. It's a slow grind. You know what it's like. You know, you have moments where you get maybe a big show and it boosts. Like I think Charlie Lee was something like episode 7, and that was a big get at the time, so that you get a boost. But most of it's just been a 7-year grind, and there's no like moment where you're like, oh shit, this is a thing. It just it's a bit like you know how you look in the mirror every day and you look like you did the day before, but if you look a year ago, you're like, oh fuck, I've changed. I've got uglier and grayer. And I think that's what like hosting a podcast is like. Is day to day, nothing really changes. But over a year, you're like, oh, a year ago, this was happening. And so I think it's one of those things that just, you can't see the change day to day. You just keep grinding away and try and get a better show and become better at what you do. And before you know it, 7 years have passed and you're gray as fuck.
So you mentioned interviewing Charlie Lee. I got the pleasure of interviewing him a few years ago back at this big event in Finland, and he's a cool guy. But who else have you interviewed? I guess like you've interviewed a bunch of big names at this point. What are some of the most interesting ones? Like, what are some of the ones that like stick out that are pretty memorable? Like, I mean, and maybe like the one I'm most interested in hearing about is the president of El Salvador. So.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's an obvious one to pick out. You know, you start a podcast as a hobby, and then like a few years later, you find yourself sat in a presidential palace about to interview the president of a country, the first country that's made Bitcoin legal tender, and you can't help but just sit back and go, "What the fuck is going on here? How is?" Yeah, anyone who's like done anything interesting in life, I mean, that's mildly interesting. You've probably got people who start a band and then one day they're playing Wembley Stadium. They're like, how did this happen? Or a footballer who's like good as a kid and then one day he's playing for England. Like, you know, in my little Bitcoin nerd world, you know, interviewing a president's a big deal. And I remember afterwards, I was just got on the plane afterwards. I was like, this is weird. How's this happening? But yeah, I mean, that was an interesting interview because it was, I mean, I've interviewed him twice, the second time even more interesting, but just because I knew, like, it's a big deal. If a president's turning around saying, yes, I'm giving you an interview, you're credible. Yeah, he thinks you're credible to do the interview. I'll tell you a funny story about the interview in a minute. Charlie Lee was a big one because it was episode 7. It was, you know, I'd gone from getting traders like Luke and day trader Nick and some randoms to getting like a known person. the guy who created Litecoin, tech director at Coinbase. So that was a big one. Lynn Ulbrich, I think that was about episode 10. I interviewed her in Austin. That one meant a lot to me because it was an interview about her son who'd been given a double life sentence plus 40 years. He's essentially never getting out of prison. So we did that interview, and it was on Ross's birthday, coincidentally. And like afterwards, I remember thinking, wow, this is important. This isn't just me asking, which coin should I buy, which I was asking Luke. This is somebody's life, and people are going to hear this story and hear about that person's life and how it's changed. And so that was a point when I knew I wanted to take it seriously. It's like episode 10. But the president was a pretty big deal for me. But there's little interviews I've done that have been really important. There's so many, it's hard to choose. But yeah, the president stands out. I'll tell you the interesting story about the one with the president. Obviously, a huge deal. I want to interview the president. I wake up on the morning of the interview and I can't sit down. I've got a herniated disc. And if I sit down, I've got sciatica in my leg. So there's pain coming up through my leg. It's not like pain you can put up with. It's excruciating pain, which means I couldn't sit down. Stood up, I'm fine. Sat down, can't move. So I'm in Zonte in El Salvador, and I call up Michael Peterson, the guy who started Bitcoin Beach, and I just told him, and he turns up with like all kinds of drugs like tramadol and whatever. So we try a little concoction that works, and it buys me about 90 minutes where I can sit down. And so it's like, fuck, so this is what I have to do for the interview. So we get a taxi up to the San Salvador, and I'm laying down in the back of the taxi. Again, I can't sit down in the taxi. And then about 15, 20 minutes before the interview, I take this cocktail of painkillers and turn up for the interview, and the president's brother's there, and he's like, do you want a drink? I was like, yeah, I'll have a whiskey. So he gets me a whiskey. Eventually we get in the interview, and we're about 40 minutes in, and I was like starting to feel a bit queasy. I was like, this doesn't feel good. I feel sick. And then I'm like, it's not like, while he's talking, I'm like saying to myself, what would happen if I was sick right now on the presidential rug in front of the president on camera? That wouldn't be good. And then I'm like, fuck, I'm going to be sick. And you get that like kind of watery taste in your mouth when you're going to vomit. I was like, I'm going to vomit. And then it's almost like my mind was provoking me to vomit. It's like, go and be sick. So anyway, I was like, do you mind if we have a toilet break? And he's like, fine. So I go to the bathroom. I'm not sick, but I'm like not good, and I'm sweating, and it's really sucks. So I have a drink of water. I go back out. We do another 20 minutes. I feel queasy again, and we finish. And I get away with it. He's got no idea. But at the time, it was rough. The biggest interview you could possibly ever land. You can't sit down, and you think you're going to vomit the whole time. It's fucking awful. Thankfully, that didn't happen the second time.
Yeah.
Yeah, mixing alcohol with the painkillers for any of those early Silk Road users. Maybe you should have known better, but that's a good
schoolboy error.
That's right.
Yeah, schoolboy error. It was cool. I feel very lucky to have been given that opportunity to do that interview, and it's it was meaningful.
Yeah, holding it together. Aside from like the sort of large stage ones that you've done, I think you bring this great energy to your work where you're very open about not necessarily being the most technical member of the community, which is something that we do a lot at Midcurve. But I think that actually gives your guests often this chance to really shine. And I'm curious if you've had any guests that aren't necessarily the biggest names, but they've sort of helped you have a big breakthrough about the technology or realize like an aha moment that really impacted you in a way.
Yeah, I mean, look, that happens a lot. But the truth is with the technical stuff, I mean, they can explain it and I can understand it at the time, but I will forget it. I'm just not a technical person. I'm a creative person. If you look at everything I've done, like the branding for what Bitcoin did, I think it's all right. And the branding for Rail Bredford's pretty good. And I think I'm quite a good storyteller with regards to all the things I create. I'm just not a technical person. But by the way, that stuff's okay. Some people like hate it. He's a fucking idiot. Why don't you know what Xpub is? And it's I used to have go back. I used to have when I worked in advertising, we had a web development agency, and we had people who would design the websites, people who would build the websites, people who do the back end work, and there's a different set of skills that would come together to be able to create that website. It's a bit like that whole thing, how no one knows how to make a pencil. Like you put a pencil for, no one knows how to make it because you have to get somebody gets the wood and the graphite and the rubber and the source them from different places and assemble it. But not one person knows how to do that. It was the same with a website. You wouldn't have the technical people design it because it would look like shit and be unusable. And you wouldn't have the creative people build it because it wouldn't work. You need a group of people to make this work. And so when you get to something like Bitcoin, technically it's very challenging. But in the original day, it's most of the UX, the software you use, it would look like shit because you didn't have designers working on it. So I never feel guilty about not understanding the technical side. I think actually it's important that we have people who don't and willing to question it. So we make better, easier, usable products for people. And I think we should be honest about these things. Like most people aren't going to set up a node because they don't give a shit and it's a lot of work. Most people won't know what an XPub is or want to interact with one because it's technically a challenging thing to get your head around. So I've always been okay with that. I mean, I don't mind if people yell at me. It's just dealing with facts here that these things are challenging. They're tough concept.
Does that ever get to you though? Like the comments?
Can do. Yeah, can do. I mean, less so in like last couple of years. You get to the point where you don't give a shit. But early on, you start a podcast for whatever reason, a bit of fun or try to make a bit of money. And if you have a bit of success, like people will start listening to it, that's cool. But nothing prepares you for the internet coming after you. Nothing prepares you for going in the comments and people just saying you're a fucking idiot or you're a fat slob, you look gross, you're thick, like relentless personal insults. It's little cuts at you, and you can't be. Some people are fine. They're suited for this. They don't give a shit. They just brush it. They brush off them. But there were certain times I was like, fucking hell, this is rough, man. I'm just out there making a show, and all these people are yelling at me and being rude and stuff. So, like I said, I don't care much anymore. I just say don't fucking listen. I don't care. But I mean, do you guys get much negative feedback?
Well, no, because right now we're still pretty small.
Yeah, we're not big enough yet. We're not big enough. When I log on one day and somebody's like, "You look like a discount Zach Galifianakis," then I'll know that we've reached it, right?
But it's something that I think about. Like I have had big followings on other platforms before in other industries, and it's something that like crossed my mind here too. Is like, as we grow bigger, like you said, the internet tends to come after you, and I think I'm pretty good at just like brushing off comments and stuff like that. But I'm always curious to hear how it's affected other people because, like you said, we're just out here like, doing something we like to do, talking about something that we love, and then all of a sudden you get a little, you get some momentum going, and you have the internet coming after you with these ad hominem attacks. And you're just like, what are we? Is it worth it? Or what are we even doing here?
I remember back in the day, Peter, too. You got some really important shit. People would be like, "I hope you die of cancer, like your mom." Like, it was insane.
That's insane.
What people
That's
say
insane.
Yeah, like what's his name? I can't remember. I don't even want to promote him. There's one guy who's like, I hope you get nut cancer and die like your mother. It's like,
I remember that.
What are you saying? But then you have to kind of like rationalize. You go, hold on. It's in some ways you get to the point where you're like, that doesn't bother me so much anymore because you're like, well, you're obviously mentally ill and unhappy, and probably no women anywhere want to like kiss your face, and you're just lonely and pathetic. These days, I take more to heart very good criticism. Yeah, very good criticism is like, you know what, Pete, that show you did, I don't think you did a particularly good job. You didn't seem well prepared, and you're like, do you know what? I didn't seem well prepared. That's more important now. Like idiots on the internet, like losers who are probably spending all day insulting anyone anywhere just because they're losers. They kind of don't matter after a while. But you kind of go on a journey to just realize that, because at first it's brutal. Yeah. But like Rogan says, just don't read the comments.
Yeah.
But I mean, you have grown to like a kind of astounding degree, I think. You've got the second podcast now that I think is much more ambitious. You're doing like all these mini docs. like you're building a straight up media empire. You own a soccer club. Like
Yeah.
I'm curious, like being able to scale like that is impressive to me. And I'm curious, like, you know, you probably don't have a blueprint. How can you possibly? But
No.
you know, like what are the sort of prerequisite steps one has to take to eventually get to a level like that?
I mean, I don't know, because there was no plan. I didn't go out and think, right, if I want to create this huge podcast and make a load of money and do X, Y, Z. I just made a podcast and it gradually grew. And once I had more capital, I could do other things. But this is more a story about Bitcoin, right? Over time, I stopped keeping money in pounds and kept them in Bitcoin. And look, it's not just a avoid inflation. If you hold on Bitcoin, every 4 years, you get this rocket ship that goes from underneath you that gives you a step change in your life. It gives you two things. It gives you capital to do things and breathing space. And so, what are the things you really want to do? And this is what you want for most people. At the moment, we're in a high inflation environment where people are trapped between that. What is it? You're trapped between the millstone of high taxation and inflation, where people get squeezed. And it's hard out there. Paying your bills, buying your groceries, filling your car, all the costs that come in with life, and then trying to be able to have the time to do something you really want to do. And so what's happened is, like, I've got that breathing space to do the things I want to do. And what do I want to do? Well, I want to try filmmaking. How to go? It's too much work. Can't do a podcast on filmmaking. So that I've experienced that, loved it. Maybe I'll do it another day. Okay, I want to start a football team. Started a football team. That's going well, loving that, and sticking with that. So it probably looks like I'm building a media empire, but I'm not really. What I'm doing is A/B testing different things I want to try, and just trying to, like, I want to direct a music video. I'm going to have a go at that at some point. I won't make any money off it, but I'll have a go just to see what it's like. But you're seeing it from the outside. From the inside, it's like, what do I want to do? What do I want to get rid of? Like, I won't be podcasting like I've been forever. Yeah, I do 40 something flights a year and making maybe 8 to 10 trips to America. It's tiring. Takes a lot out of my time. I doubt I'll be doing a Bitcoin podcast in 4 years. Will I be doing one in 2 years? I don't know, because I'm 45 now. I've made a lot of sacrifices, missed a lot of my kids' childhood, and I've sacrificed my own health. Like, I've got fat doing this. And so, there will come a time where it's time to do other things, but there's no dreams of an empire. It might look like that from the outside, but it really just A/B testing, trying different things and seeing what I like doing and what I don't like doing.
I mean, I think that's a great answer, but it's also like a credit to the freedom that this industry can give somebody.
Yeah, like, if I didn't have Bitcoin, I probably would be trying to build a media empire, because you're trying to get yourself and your family to a stage of financial freedom, and that takes a lot. And if you're doing it within the fiat system, you've got a taxation hurdle to get over, and then you want to save a bit of money. And then if you save a bit of money, well, that's going to melt away. So maybe you should invest a bit. And it's hard. It's hard. But if anything, I'm heading towards slowing down and retirement now these days, because like, what's the fucking point? What do you do anything for? What do you like? Why do you go to work or do a podcast? Ultimately, you do it to be able to live certain experience and do certain things. And I'm now more interested in starting to do those things I've always wanted to do, which is, run a football team and try and be less fat.
So can we talk about that for people who don't know? Can you talk about how you came to own a football team and what your experience has been like so far?
Yeah, so I live in a little town called Bedford. It's about 40 minutes north of London on the train. Our town's quite big, but it's never had a team in the Football League, which is the professional soccer divisions, which is the Premier League, Championship, League One, League Two. We've never had that. And so I ended up buying a team that's in the 10th tier. With that team, I was like, I want to get them in the Football League, the professional leagues. So that was 6 promotions and progressively harder promotions, which means you need the money to buy the best players and the manager and do the infrastructure. And so I was like, how do you do this? One option is you have to be wealthy and you can throw money at it. or two, you have to have a good business behind it, and that business has to pay for it. So I spoke to a bunch of people in Bitcoin, companies I knew, investors I knew, and said, look, I have a plan. I think I'll make us the Bitcoin team. Will you back it? And people did. They've backed it from day one. We've sold over £200,000 of merch, thousands of shirts. We've had people fly all over the world, come watch us play. And we've got Bitcoin companies that sponsor us. I mean, I think we just announced our Gemini front of shirt deal.
That's right. Gemini was 2 days ago. Congrats.
5-year deal, £500,000 paid in Bitcoin in advance. It's a great deal, and that enables us to do other things. And so, with a football team, I mean, you're in America, so your sport's very communist. You know, you can't get promoted or relegated, and the shittest team gets the best players from the draft, which is kind of ironic for America to be like that. But our sports is very capitalist. If you finish in the bottom 2 or 3, you're going to get relegated to a lower division. If you get them in the top 2 or 3, you get promoted. And promotion and relegations is this incredible thing. It's just a real beauty in sport. It means you don't have to be a billionaire to buy a club. You can buy a club in the 10th tier like I did for pennies, and you can get them up to the Premier League if you win leagues. And so, yeah, look, first 2 years, the men's team have won a league and cup double, been promoted both times. And we're going into the 8th tier this August, and the ladies won the treble. And so they're going into the 4th tier of ladies football, and the plan is working. It is working.
So that's actually amazing. The only reason I know about this type of thing is because I watched the first season of Wrexham, where you had like Deadpool and Rob bought the Wrexham Football Club. And so like then they like kind of showed me like, oh, this is how it works, you know, the relegation promotion type thing. But even watching that show, it seems very stressful to run a football club. Is it a stress?
Fuck yeah. I mean, look here. Look at this. I'll show you this. Hold on 1 second. What you've got here is all the kit for this new season. One job I have to do is make sure every single player has their training shorts, training shirt, tracksuit. The problem is we have to get this stuff ordered before the players are signed, so we don't know what sizes they are. And so we have to get those in, and then the player sign, and we've got the wrong sizes. We have to get more stuff, but we have a budget to work to. That's one element of 1,000 things I have to do.
And that's just going to compound as you get promoted, right? It's just going to get like bigger, more stressful, like more expensive. That's insane. Like, how do you? And Rob or Ryan Reynolds, they did that after you bought the football club, right?
Yeah,
were they after or before?
I think it was after, but they announced it before we announced ours.
Okay. I was going to say they just ripped you off.
I wish. I wish they knew I existed so we can get a game. But it's also this interesting thing, right? Because have you run a business?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you know what it's like, right? Yep. Most businesses are pretty simple. You have a product within an active market, and if your product is produced to the right quality at the right price, and you run your back office in an efficient way, you will grow a successful business. Okay? And if you don't, either there isn't a market, or you're too expensive, or your quality is not there. But there will be a reason why you don't grow that business. This, you can run the perfect business. Come Saturday, if the players don't win, you don't get 3 points, you might not get promoted. So it's this weird emotional business whereby everything comes down to Saturday at 3:00, did they win? And they might not win because a player makes a mistake, or they just cannot finish, or the ref makes a poor decision. And so it becomes this super emotional thing. I mean, you saw the Wrexham thing, right? That first season, they went out in the playoff semi-finals. I think they lost 5-4 in this wild fucking game that went back and forth. And so that moment where you've gone out of the playoffs, it's like that whole season, it's like, it's done. We have to start again next year and have a go again. Now, luckily, we've won the league each year, but there was a moment this season gone, I thought we might not go up. You know, we had a wobble. That's stressful. But it's the best job in the world as well. Like, it's so exciting.
Man, now I'm going to have to come watch a game.
Fuck come. Where are you? Where are you based?
I'm on the West Coast. I'm in Portland.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in DC. I was going to say I haven't run a business, and so I can't really compare to this, but I do watch price charts a lot, and it sounds kind of similar to that.
Can't control it. It's things you just cannot control. That feel irrational and weird. How's Portland? Is it still fucked up?
That's the first thing everyone asks about Portland. I was in Tokyo.
Didn't
I was
they
in Tokyo last week, and they asked the same thing. Like all the. Oh,
sorry,
go ahead.
I was going to say, didn't they create like this communist economic zone in the center?
That was Seattle. But Portland did a similar thing. Yes. The famous one was in
people running around bashing people over the head with yogurts.
Yeah, that was a thing for a while there. Yeah, it was actually pretty crazy. They laid siege to the Capitol building for a while, and yeah, it was a whole thing, man, for like a year. Portland it's gotten much better, I would say. We still have our problems, obviously, but it's there's pockets. Because anyway, like I was saying, I was in Tokyo last week filming a doc for Midcurve, and same thing. All the Japanese people who I was talking with and who I'm friends with, they would ask, oh, like, isn't Portland just kind of like a Mad Max zone? And there's a truth to that, but it is, like I said, it's kind of siloed in certain pockets, and then so you could go into the city and you could have a wonderful time, and you could turn a corner and you could be getting chased by someone with a butcher knife. It's just random.
I've been to Portland. I liked it. I love how in the center of the city you can see trees.
Yeah,
in the distance.
Yeah.
It's
I
so
mean,
beautiful.
here there are trees everywhere, and there's we have a big mountain. We have a huge river. It's a beautiful place. If it wasn't for that element. And the other thing is now looting is basically legal, just like in San Francisco. Also, all drugs are legal here. So the big push was to make everything basically legal. But the problem is that Nike and REI and all the other big corps that were in Portland have pulled out because it's just untenable to do business there anymore when you have people who can steal about $900 worth of stuff and there's no consequence. So they started pulling out of the city, and once that happened, politicians started changing their tune really quick. You can't have Nike pulling out of your city when the Nike World headquarters is here, and it employs, I don't know, most of Portland. Between them and Intel and Adidas, they all have headquarters here. That's where everyone works. So you can't piss Nike off, is just a fact.
Yeah, you can't go full commie.
You can't. No, you cannot.
Well, I love how Justin's like, it's not as bad as people say, but also if you go around the corner, there's a guy with a butcher knife.
It just keeps you on your toes. You got to survive.
Sure.
It's preparing me for the coming apocalypse. That's how I see it. I'm a survivor now.
Man, I love Portland. When I went, I thought it was such a beautiful, cool place.
It's an amazing place to live. It really is. I've traveled. I tell people this. I've traveled to 53 countries multiple times. I've lived in Asia and Europe, and I've seen some really beautiful places. And every time I come home, I'm just like, man, I took this for granted growing up, for sure. Especially if you're into the outdoors, because we have mountains, rivers, beach, deserts, everything.
Have you got that app called Bean?
No, what is it?
It's cool. So you can track all the countries you've been to.
Oh, okay, cool.
So you said 53. I just checked mine. I'm on 49.
Okay.
Somebody once said to me, "You got to stay above your age."
You do, yeah.
I like that a lot. Yeah.
So my goal was always 30 before 30, and then I would see where I went from there. But that was always the goal, And now it's I want to hit 100.
What's your favorite place you've been to?
Man, that's so tough.
You're only allowed one. You can't say, well, I like this and that.
Yeah, I know. That's where I was going with that. Man, I honestly couldn't choose. I would say my favorite city is Hong Kong. I love Hong Kong. I don't know what it is. I always tell people I think it's nostalgia from watching Jackie Chan movies when I was a kid. It's really nostalgic because I loved those when I was little. So Hong Kong is amazing. It's an amazing city, amazing energy. If I was going to retire somewhere though and just like live, like both my wife and I are Italian and we get our Italian citizenship. So I would retire in the Med somewhere, probably a Greek, like Crete would be one that we would think about.
I think Italy is the best country in the world.
Yeah, it's great.
Phenomenal. They've just maintained their culture.
Yeah.
They kind of fucking know it too. Like they act like they're the best in the world.
Their prime minister is based right now. She's I really like her, but her whole thing is running on family values. And as like an Italian growing up in like Italian culture, that's like ingrained in my DNA, like family. So it's
maintain their culture. The other thing about in Italy that I found is everyone is acting like they've just had sex. They probably have, but they have. And everyone's so beautiful and nice and cultured.
It's the thing is, that's kind of also the reason why they haven't really contributed to the world in the last, like how many ever years. Is they're just too busy living life, right? They're just like sitting around drinking wine at like, 10 a.m. and, just having a conversation. And it's an amazing place for that.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I love Italy.
What's your favorite country?
Well, Italy's my favorite country.
Okay.
But like, it's such an easy one to say to people. I really liked India.
Oh, okay.
Just because it's so fucking crazy.
It's crazy.
It's nuts.
It's crazy.
You've been right. Yeah. Fucking, the place is nuts.
It's people don't understand the level of chaos in some of these countries, like Central Africa, India, Southeast Asia. It's like this controlled chaos, and you like cannot comprehend it until you get there and see it for yourself.
Yeah. Have you been to Vietnam?
Yes, that was this other one I was going to say, was like just walking across the street in Vietnam and like all like thousands of scooters coming towards you and just like going around you like a school of fish is an experience I think everyone should have.
Sorry, I've taken over the interview.
No. I love it.
Man, instinctively flexing that muscle. Let's fucking go.
Yeah.
Be the guest, Pete. You're the guest.
Yeah. So let's get back on track though. Let's not that this isn't like the most interesting thing to me, but Andrew, blockchains.
Oh yeah, I guess that is sort of my thing. Well, I'm curious about you because like I think for an outsider, you're just a Bitcoiner, right? Like crypto has become its own world, and there's a lot of the population that would just slot you into that sort of designation. But I think from your perspective, you've had a lot of tussles with Bitcoiners, right? You're not quite, just so easy to put in that faction if you're in that community. And so I'm wondering just like how your views have evolved, or like how you see yourself as part of like the faction interplay and all that. That's, thank God.
I don't know. I just, I would say I believe in God. I don't give a fuck about your church. So I believe in Bitcoin, but like just because you're anti-government, or you sun your balls, or you eat steak every meal, I doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to. There can be a bit of groupthink at times, and I don't understand why. Right? Someone can make a logical argument, and you agree with their logical argument because you haven't tested it, or you just feel a connection, or you look up to somebody and they said something, so you look up to them and you feel like you should think that. I'm just like some fucking degenerate from Bedford in England, and I'm not going to change from who I am and become somebody else. So I think I've just stayed as I am, and if I don't believe something, I'll say it, and if I don't agree with something, I'll say it. And so I've never really fit into one of the groups as such. I fit broadly into Bitcoin because I'm a Bitcoiner, and I don't fit into crypto because I just don't care about shitcoins. But everything else, I find certain things interesting. I think some of the libertarian arguments are very interesting, but I'm not a libertarian. So I don't know. I don't really think about it. I don't know. It's a good question. I have no solid answer for. All I know is I just try and stay me, because like most of my life isn't revolving around Bitcoin. Yeah, after this, I'm going to get off this call. I'm going to go and make dinner and hang out with my kids, and we're going to watch a film or go for a walk. And on the weekend, when I'm hanging out with my friends, they couldn't give a fuck about Bitcoin. If I bring it up, they'll tell me to shut up. So Bitcoin is a job and a savings technology for me, but it's not my ideology, and it's not my. I'm not living a Bitcoin lifestyle. I'm living a bloke in Bedford who runs a football team lifestyle. But for some people, Bitcoin has become their identity. And I certainly think people in the UK will see Bitcoin as my identity, because I've got a profile around it, but I don't live it as my identity day to day. Does that make sense?
Yes, it completely makes sense. It reminds me of something Zano, the co-founder of Judo, said when I interviewed him, which was like, he's like, crypto's my life, but it's my least favorite thing that I do. Like, which was hilarious to me. He's like, he's a DJ. He loves music. That's like what he does. Obviously, like crypto and running judo is like, his main core thing, but it's not his identity. If he had to choose, his identity would be in music, right? So I
these days, like, if somebody wants to interview me about Bitcoin, I usually say no, because I don't really have any like super interesting takes. I don't have any niche experience apart from a podcast. So sometimes people want to ask me about the experience of doing a podcast.
Yeah.
But you ask me about football, I have got takes. I've got unique takes. I've got experience, and and I can talk about it endlessly.
Yeah. And I
see you like trying to do that on your Twitter, though. It's this funny thing where, you can get 100 likes snapping your fingers if it's a crypto take, but your football sort of following is still in the process of growing.
Yeah, and I'm perfectly aware I've probably lost listeners when I talk about football on the podcast. And some people will they say, I don't care about your football tweets. I'm like, okay, well, just don't follow me then. I don't
follow. Yeah, exactly.
So, because I actually think the football thing's a really important thing for Bitcoin. And I think some people have started to recognize that.
Yeah.
In that, because of Bitcoin, we're winning. It is our cheat code. And because of that, more people are being aware of Bitcoin. And it's doing that job of embedding Bitcoin into the real world. So I think it's an important thing.
I mean, that's the thing, though, right? Like, everyone wants to talk about like getting crypto into the real world, but then they're not on board with you talking about actually using Bitcoin in the real world. That's insane.
Well, so this interesting debate happened in my YouTube comments the other day, because I've been like toying with the idea of running for mayor, and it came up in a few interviews, and one guy commented, football club, mayor, your bar, like the shows you talking about yourself. And I was like, God, maybe it has been. That's a bit self-indulgent. Like, what do people come here for? They want to listen to interviews. And then there was like a debate in the comments underneath where some people were like, no, Pete's actioning what the things I talked about in the podcast. He's out there doing it. He's challenging governance and he's accepting Bitcoin. And there are other people saying, well, yeah, but I don't want to hear about all of that. I want to hear the guest speak. So it was a really interesting thing where I was like, I don't really know what to do about that, because, you don't want to be totally self-indulgent, but at the same time, people can learn from this. So it's a weird thing.
No, I think what you're doing is really interesting, because, and if you look at like what kind of content is blowing up right now on YouTube, it's kind of like voyeuristic content. Like, vlogs are coming back. People want to see people living their life, like a raw look into living their life. And for you, I think that it's amazing. You're just talking about your life. You're living out what you believe, and you're giving people like a kind of behind the scenes into that. I think what would be really interesting is if you actually hired like a little filmmaker or a vlogger or whatever, just to follow you around for the day and do like a day in the life type content of you like running the football club, meeting the players, like that type of thing, and talking about how Bitcoin is fueling all of that. I think that would be amazing content. You should do that.
So we've got a guy.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, so we've got a guy. Yeah. We've taken not so much for me, more for the football club, and I will be part of that. But from essentially from August, we've got a guy full-time working on it.
It's like a mini Wrexham. That's what it should be. That'd be sick. Or even a better Wrexham.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to beat Ryan Reynolds. Ryan Reynolds' budget's pretty big, so that's tough.
I watched This Is Wrexham, and they go and visit the team like 3 times a year, and the rest of the time they're on Zoom for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm in there on a Saturday setting up the kits, putting the merch out, serving
Oh,
behind the bar. Like, I'm in there doing the whole thing. So fuck you,
That-
Deadpool. We've definitely got to play Wrexham at some point.
yeah, that would be incredible. So like going back to like the Bitcoin thing, I have like just a couple more questions on it. Like, what are your thoughts on new technologies or new projects coming out in the Bitcoin sphere, like ordinals, let's say? I know.
Yeah. So as a podcaster, I find the tension around it interesting. That's what I find interesting. The tension and the discussions around it. Will I use ordinals? No, I've got. It's why I stopped using crypto. That's why I went Bitcoin only, because there was like this self-realization at one point. It's like, what do I actually use here? I'm buying, I don't know what I was buying, Gnosis and fucking Library Coin, but with Library Coin, I wasn't uploading videos, right? And with Gnosis, I wasn't actually. I think that was prediction markets. I wasn't using the prediction markets, and so what I realized is that I'm only actually using Bitcoin. I'm paying for things with Bitcoin, and I'm storing wealth in Bitcoin. And so if I wasn't using these other cryptos, I was just buying the tokens as a gamble. So I was like, well, there's no point. That's why I went Bitcoin only. And so when I look at ordinals, I currently have zero use for ordinals. Now, there may come a time whereby someone does equity on the Bitcoin blockchain in some kind of token format that's legally viable and not a shitcoin. And that might be an interesting thing for Real Bedford, for the football club, that we sell some equity and exists on the Bitcoin blockchain. But in terms of my use case, I just don't have a use case for it. I don't care about quantum cats or a wizard or a fucking JPEG.
I was about to say, digital collectibles are less interesting when you're buying football clubs.
Yeah, but it's just less interesting anyway. I mean, it's just not something I have any interest in or have any use for, so I don't really care about it. With Bitcoin, I was here for the money. When I went to Venezuela, I saw the problem with money. And when I went to Malawi, I saw the problem with money. And when I went to Ghana, I saw the problem with money. And when I was in Argentina or Lebanon, all these, I saw the problem with money. And Bitcoin is here to fix money. So I care about that. I've not seen any problems with art that putting it digitally on a blockchain solves. So I just don't have an interest. I don't want to buy them. I don't care about them. To me, they're just a distraction for what I care about. But I find the tension interesting. It is an interesting debate. And also, look, maybe I'm just old. Maybe that's just it. I'm 45. It gets to that point whereby all the young lads these days, they wear these shoulder bags. They're like handbags. And I keep my wallet and phone and keys in my pocket. And if I don't want it in my pocket, if I'm with a girl, it'll go in her handbag. I'm never going to wear a bag around me because I'm old, but all the young people do. And you can it's fashion. You look at kids' fashion these days. Or music. Great one's hip hop, right? So I love hip hop. I'm a 90s hip hop maxi. I love my old school Tupac. I love Naughty by Nature. I like some modern stuff. My kids, they're playing Travis Scott, Kendrick Lamar. I think it's shit. It all sounds the same. It's all auto-tune bullshit. The lyrics are just crap. And I'm desperately... Maybe Kendrick's got some...
I was going to say Kendrick.
Yeah, but me and my producer have got this ongoing argument, because I say the last... Do you know that What the Fuck Happened in 1971 about money?
Mm-hmm.
It counts the gold standard. I think there's a similar one in music. And the last great album that was ever made was Amy Winehouse's Back to Black. I don't think we've had a great album since. I don't think we will, because the way music has changed. You don't tend to make albums anymore. You make songs and occasional albums. I don't think we'll get another great classic like that ever again. Danny, my producer, is like, no, Kendrick Lamar, some fucking album about butterflies. He's like, To Kill a Butterfly or something. He's like, no, it's amazing. Honestly, I listened to it. It's all right. It's okay. Pretty average. But again, it might be my age. My kids, they love Travis Scott. And I just think it's shit. So it could be an age thing. Maybe I'm just too old to get ordinals and to get inscriptions and to get all this bullshit. And I should just accept that I'm just old and stuck in my ways.
But it does sound like that you're at the very least interested in the financial aspects. So could you imagine, using like a lending protocol on a Bitcoin L2? Tokenized equity sounds like it's interesting to you.
I
Like,
mean,
are there
maybe.
tools?
Look, if a lending protocol has had enough time in the market to prove that its smart contracts cannot be hacked, that its bridge, whatever bridge it has, cannot be hacked, I may consider it. But at the moment, everything appears to get hacked at some point. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've used Ledn. I took a loan with Ledn, and that was cool. It worked. They deposited the money in my bank, and they're holding my collateral, which is my risk. And I looked at, is it Thorchain? Is that the Eric Voorhees one? And I looked at that, and the rates, the borrowing rates are significantly lower. But has it been hacked? Could it be hacked? There's a real trade-off here. But trajectory-wise, I know it's going there. I know that's where it's going. So maybe at some point I will end up using it. But right now, I'm intrigued by what's coming, and I'm cautious about using it myself.
Yeah, and it sounds like you don't really need that stuff, at least in its current instantiation, right? Bitcoin is perfectly good as savings technology for you right now.
You say that, right? If somebody solves the ability to get a mortgage by collateralizing loans on an L2, whereby it's like close to zero risk, and I'm getting a much lower interest rate than a bank, I'm going to be interested in that. So I'm intrigued by it. I'm like, my eyes are open to what's coming, but then I'll also maintain like a healthy skepticism about whether this thing will survive or break. Unfortunately, the longer you are in Bitcoin or wider crypto, the more endless rug pulls, hacks, bullshit you see. So you become very skeptical.
That's right. Yeah. I think we're coming up on time here. Andrew, do you have any last questions? Because we are already almost at an hour.
I mean, I just give the floor to Peter. Like, what do you got going on? What do you want to plug here? Because you've got about 1,000 projects. What's the one you're most excited to show to the world right now?
Look, just the football. I love the football. I want everyone to back the football. It's the hardest I've ever worked, and it's essentially a hobby because I'm never going to make any money from it. Like every year with a football club, your goal is to break even. If you've broken even, that's amazing. And so this year our budget's fucking huge. It's nearly £1 million. I've got to make that break even. Now I've sold a lot of advertising. I need to sell a shit ton of merch, and I need to get people to come to the games. And if we break even, that's great. We haven't lost money. We go into next season and we go again. So the football's what I care about most of all. RailBedford.com. Go get yourself a hoodie or a jersey. That's what I care most about. Everything else is just like, the podcast is cool, but the football club's what I care about. So we have to get
we need to, like, Mid-Curve needs to become the side project. Like,
yeah. I think I was gonna say, I feel like we should come over to Bedford and do a film on the football club. I think that would be awesome.
At my place, we can go drink in my bar,
dude.
In my coffee shop.
Oh, are you a coffee guy too?
Well, I'm about to open a coffee shop.
This is happening.
So I used to own a coffee company and a coffee shop in Portland. So I'd import, roast, ship all over the world, and we had a couple coffee shops here in Portland.
Did you sell it?
Yeah, I sold it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm excited by it. Yeah. So like, none of these businesses, owning a bar or a coffee shop, make commercial sense. Once you've got Bitcoin, I just put the money. So when I bought the bar, if I'd have just put the money in Bitcoin, it would have tripled since then, right? And it was a lot of money, and I'm never going to make that money back. But there's something nice about building little businesses locally and creating jobs. And like I said, I'm 45 now. I've got 15, 20 good years of business left in me, and I like the idea of just creating little local businesses.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's incredible. So I'm the opposite way. I created a couple local small businesses and sold both of them and was like, I'm never doing this again. Online businesses only.
Oh no, don't scare me.
Yeah. We could talk about that later. I feel like we need to do a podcast on just what?
You should come over.
Okay, let's do it. We'll talk offline about this because I really want to do this. This would be actually really fun. But yeah, I was gonna say, No, I lost my train of thought on that one. Yeah,
This
let's do it.
this is a fortuitous link up between you two, though. Longtime
Yeah.
listeners know that my personal theory is that Justin is actually a CIA agent. He's just done too much shit and been to too many places. Peter's given a very strong potential deep state plant vibe.
I think so. I think you might be right on that. Yeah, that's what I was going to say is we should do a podcast on just football, traveling, coffee, and being a CIA agent. So
Bro,
let's
I'm all over
that'll
that.
be our
Yeah.
next-
I share
Yeah.
every one of those hobbies.
Yes. And drinking. There you go. That'll be the last.
Totally too. Yeah, too much.
Okay. Man, thank you so much for coming
No,
on.
thank
This
you
was
so
actually this was an amazing episode, I think. Yeah, I can't wait to do the next one with you.
Yeah, appreciate you, man. This was cool. Enjoyed it.
Cool.